They're telling us to keep at it. I think for the first time it is across board that Nigerians are tired of the same old political system, personalities, and character that have run the country aground. And anybody like myself who has maintained a consistent disdain for this system of exploitation of the people and denigration and degradation of our people's economy.
Man in Nigeria as we speak today. And the second person is you. INEC chairman was saying, look, we are ready. There will be no postponement of the elections, and he was addressing a forum of political parties, which I believe your party was also in attendance at that time, because it was also presenting the register of voters, about 93.4
registered voters
in
which is different from people with PVCs.
Now, there was a counter voice, which was yours.
Yes.
The issue ringing across the land yesterday, that you don't trust this INEC. They cannot do this election. What has led to that in a campaign that you are in, and these guys will still conduct the election?
Well, you know, I participated in 2019, and we were very clear in 2019 that INEC was not ready for free and fair elections. People ignored it. And when the election came and passed, everybody across board said there was no election. There was no election. And they went to court. In court, they couldn't prove that they won the election, so they had to rule on technicality. I didn't know the details because I was in detention, having been accused of trying to overthrow the government about the same time. I spent 5 months in detention, but at that time they had concluded the litigation in court. But the point, again, is to remind the Nigerian people that INEC, as I know it, and I've studied it, doesn't have, first, the credible leadership. The leadership of INEC at this point is populated by members of the APC. Yes.
But why then did you wait till this moment?
I didn't wait.
We are just like
I didn't
stone
wait.
throw away from the elections.
I didn't wait till this moment. You should have followed me. You know, followed the Jardinians. We were shouting. We were shouting and writing. We were mentioning names that were nominated. We were the ones that campaigned against the nomination of Loretta Onoshe, who was Buhari's spokesperson at that time, one of his media aides. They removed her because the Senate rejected, and they secretly replaced with their own people. And the Nigerian Senate, the National Assembly, had accepted them. We never stopped. What didn't happen was that the media did not pay enough attention until now. Before yesterday had been said, INEC was not ready. INEC came out 3 days ago and said they're afraid that the election will not hold, cannot hold. It wasn't them that started saying that. I had been talking about the fact that too many non-state actors, right, are in control of territory and that's going to threaten this election. I was in attendance of a meeting with all the leaders of the security agencies in Nigeria. I spoke there that the police has not given assurance that they are able to protect and provide security for free and fair election. The policemen called all the media people not to air my view.
Now, with what you have said,
yes,
at this moment, would you still be going ahead to be, because you cannot you've raised an alarm already now that you don't trust these umpires. They cannot conduct a credible election, free and fair. That's what you said yesterday at the Punch Forum.
Yes.
So, are you still in the race?
I'm in the race. I'm in the race because it is the people that must guarantee the credibility of the election. Not INEC. There's no electoral umpire in Nigeria that's ever conducted a free and fair election. The last time we had the semblance of free and fair election was in 1993. And it was because the people stood their ground. In fact, the eve of that election, a court had ruled that the election should not go ahead. The Nigerian people came out and voted and elected a president who was not allowed to take power. So INEC, this is what INEC does. They confuse the public. They show that elections are not properly held, and they announce the results. But the people can stand up now, having been given adequate notice. We have 45 days to go.
Okay, well, we still got a lot of questions to ask you, but
Yes.
we'd like to quickly take it back to the people who are listening right now, just to let them know that they can be part of this conversation by reaching us up on 01448 9981 for calls. We can take WhatsApp messages on 0809 444 0981. I'm speaking with Omoyele, presidential candidate of the African Action Congress, is here on Talk Politics on Smooth 98.1. While we wait for the calls to come in on 01448 let's get on to some of the issues that have resonated on the campaign trail with you. You seem to be very, very uncomfortable with the Nigerian federalism as it is right now. What is really your gross with the kind of federal system we have, and what are you bringing to the table?
It is that, we're supposed to be practicing a federal system, but we're in a unitary, heavily militarized system. And this was as a result of the fact that the Constitution, the ground norm of the operational back end of, backbone of Nigeria, is the military constitution. So the people who are running the country are running as a military state. And I have said that the solution is to frame a new constitution and jettison and junk the old constitution that was made by the military, because that constitution has no background in credibility or legality. It did not pass through the people. You cannot write on the first page of a constitution, "We the people," and then inside the constitution there's no input from the people.
But apparently, is there ever a time in the history of man, societies evolving where we are 200 million people in Nigeria, where we would all gather somewhere at TBS, and some persons must have to go and be the eyes of the people,
Yeah.
and put their input there.
No,
Then we become we.
There is a way constitutions are made. If, as I'm sitting here today, if I ask you some of the framers of the U.S. Constitution, you would tell me. I'm sure you know them, right? The Jeffersons of this world and all the guys who wrote that Constitution. They didn't even call it, they didn't say they wrote it, they said they framed the Constitution. That was 1789. If I sit down, if I ask you here that the 1999 Nigerian Constitution, did you know anybody who was part of the framers or writers? Do you know it? It's just a simple question. It's not a quiz.
Yeah, I know.
You don't get penalized for not getting it.
I could go for
You understand what I'm trying to
yes,
say?
and
You
so
don't know
what
anybody
you're
that
talking
because nobody participated in it. In fact, the Constitution was so horridly written that Chief Wood, who was the Minister of Information at that time, said there was not a single copy of the Nigerian Constitution the day Obasanjo was sworn in. It was still at the printers. Most importantly, is this: when the Constitution doesn't pass the litmus test, you can't call it a Constitution. There's no time the 200 million people will ever say, will sit in a place. No, but there's a process for getting them to vet the Constitution.
But the National Assembly is empowered to do that because
The National Assembly
are
emerged
granting
from an
freedom.
illegality, Yes.
Now,
You
there's also
can't
this
build
talk-
something on nothing.
You've also talked about restructuring
Yeah.
currently, and every politician seems to have their different understanding of what restructuring is.
That's true.
Restructuring, really, what is it in your own, view?
In a nutshell, the Nigerian vehicle, right, and I'm using an analogy now, has been working non-stop. Restructuring is taking a look at the country, its background, its foundation, and saying a lot of replacements needs to be done on the parts, the moving parts of the country. So people have come and said, we don't have enough power where they should be devolved to, devolution of power. That's part of the argument. There are people who are discussing the issue of control of resources. Are the owners of resources getting enough? Or should they control how 100% and just pay taxes? There are people who are talking about how to police the system. Restructuring involves even the national electric grid. Should it be a national grid or a regional grid? And most importantly, restructuring has to do with what is in the exclusive list, in this country. A lot of people want those things dismantled. But my own solution is simple. If you want to restructure Nigeria, go to a sovereign national conference.
It's still Talk Politics on Smooth 98.1. We'll go on a quick break. We'll be right back after this timeout. We've still got Omoyele Sowore of the African Action Congress here with us on Talk Politics. And you too can be part of the conversation by reaching us up on 014489981. But that will be after this timeout.
Smooth, smooth, love music.
Come back. So, we've still got a few more minutes to go. No. I can hear this one. We're back. And we're back. It's still Talk Politics on Smooth 98.1. As the presidential candidate of African Action Congress, Omoyele Sowore is here with us. So, before we went on that, you talked about restructuring and how it would intend, looking at certain functions of 3 tiers of government.
That's right.
But something very important, because I know we're pressed for time, so but to get you to talk about some of these pressing things we've heard you talk about in your campaign trail. And you talked about the need to overhaul drastically the Nigerian security architecture. What exactly are you looking at?
So
Because
with
I
regards,
mean, the background of the current security
yeah,
challenges in the
the background to that is what I have seen, and analyzed to be an abandonment of security roles. So the Nigerian police, for instance, has the highest number of personnel, but it has abandoned policing to the army. To this point that if you step out of here now and there's traffic, you're most likely to see a soldier controlling traffic than you see a police person. Are you getting my point? And what are the policemen doing? They're protecting VIPs. If you also run into a convoy of a person of known or unknown quantity, you see huge number of policemen, well kitted, they're, ready to kill. I'm saying return policing to police. Reform the police very well. Ensure that the recruitment process is transparent and adequately done so that you don't recruit rogues into the police system. And ultimately, break up the police so that the states can control police. What we need is a police structure that has a central discipline and training system. That is to say, there must be uniformity of training. If you're training a state police in Sokoto, make sure that the same police is trained in a place so that you don't have Sokoto governor using Hishba and religious police to enforce civilian matters. You understand? That's the only thing I will insist on, that the training will be uniform, that the central business of policing has a police code that doesn't, when you go to Ondo, somebody will not break your head and say that's how we do it in Ondo. And but in terms of how the control and command system, let the states control. Even campuses, can they have police? Local government, can they have police? I lived in the U.S. for 20 years. Can't say that enough. My town has a police unit, police department, and when they are following you and they go to the boundary of the next town, they'll come back. And if there is a territory in between the next town and they can't control you, they call the state police to come after you. The state police their own highway. Local government police their own highway. That's the way policing is done, because policing, just like politics, is local.
I think Mr. C has a follow-up here to that question.
Okay, so thank you for your points. I have 2 questions.
Yes.
You did point out much earlier that Nigeria is in effect, a unitary state, even though we pretend to be a federal state.
That's right.
Now, you just said that with regards to the training of police, you make sure it's uniform. Now, as much as possible, right, the states, in a truly federal system, the states are to some extent independent. If a state decides, I don't want to go with the federal way of training, I have a better way, why should they be compelled under your administration, for example, to follow your lead? That's one. Two. Now, yes, all over the world, policing is local. But we are all aware of the peculiar problems in Nigeria. And one of the major problems bedeviling the Nigeria police force, outside the indiscipline and the corruption, is funding. So, how would you fund the police in your administration? Where would you get the money from, and how would you sustain it? Because, yes, these are brilliant ideas on paper, but we all know that there's a difference between theoretical ideas and bringing them into reality.
So, yeah, thank you very much. So, with regards to your first question about uniform policing, the U.S. is a federal government.
Correct.
The states are independent. In fact, if you are a judge in the U.S., as a federal judge, you must operate based on state laws in that jurisdiction. So you can't come and bring a federal law. I'm just using that as an example. If the U.S. has a police, a national police, but it's not the uniform type, it's the FBI.
Correct.
Yes. If there's a violation of human rights by a police department in the U.S., including the campus police, the FBI will go in there, investigate, and take over the police station if necessary. Because that idea of fundamental rights is national for them. Well, it's universal. So that's the same thing I'm proposing, for those who always apply this to international bodies. And it speaks to your second question, that if we worry that funding and the excesses of governors or local government chairman could make the police go rogue, there must be an oversight system that we agree within the federal structure, that these are boundaries that must not be crossed. You cannot say because you are state police, you are trained in a state facility, you have a right to take life. If you take life, and the state governor is happy that you took somebody's life, the federal government must be able to come in as a superstructure, because still there is a federal government, as a superstructure to say, look, taking off a human life is unacceptable. And this is where the issue of funding comes in. We will agree at the federal level that we will make deductions. This is my proposal. Okay. We'll make deductions from the security funds, the allocation of security funds to governors. We will deduct in advance at the federal level before we disburse the state funds to them, because funding for even states and local government comes from the federal purse, because the states don't generate enough money. Apparently, we haven't gotten there. So that police salaries across the states, or wherever we might have policing, is paid whether the governor wants to pay it or not. But it's taken from the security funds that are being quaffed right now by state governments
and
or governor.
Brings me to the final question we've got for you. So, the last question here is, if hypothetically you were elected as the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and sworn in on May 29th, you'll be inheriting about 77 trillion naira debt. Does this bother you, knowing that you also seem to propose a socialist kind of government as you're coming? Where would you get all of these funds from?
See, debts by themselves are not the biggest problem of government. Otherwise, the U.S. government would have been bankrupted a long time ago. Really, the most indebted government in the world. They owe China a huge amount of money. They owe everybody. But our debt to GDP ratio is not out of control yet. Our problem is debt to revenue. And we're servicing debt now with almost 80% of our revenue. What I would do, first and foremost, is to pause debt repayment. And I'll go to the next level, which is audit the debts. Do we really owe? Because Nigerian government likes to throw around figures. And this happened during Obasanjo's regime. When Obasanjo came in, I think our debt was like 30-something billion. When they audited the debt, they discovered that Nigeria didn't owe as much money as they claim we're owing. In fact, some 25 years later, some of the debt deductions they did, they are now refunding to state governors, and of course, they're happily stealing it as well. So, if you don't audit this debt, don't come to a final conclusion that we're owing 77 trillion. But the final thing about money is that, look, I know where money is because I'm a follower of Nigeria's money as a journalist for more than 14, 16
that
years.
takes us into this now
Yeah,
quickly. This
yeah.
is it. Let's say we get into a runoff and you are making it to the next round. Would you consider seeking for endorsements from the OBJs of this world and other political parties to get you into Aso Rock?
No, I won't ask any failed Nigerian leader to endorse me. If I get it to the runoff and I'm up to the next election, it means that the confidence level is really high enough to bypass, liabilities.
Well, so on this note, we must wrap up the show today. It's been Talk Politics on Smooth 98.1, and today we've gotten the presidential honor of having the date of the African Action Congress, Omoyele Sowore, speaking to us on sundry issues. We do hope you find time, to take out points and then look out for it. But above all, the choice lies with the Nigerian people, as he has said. I want to say thank you to Mr. C for sticking out with us today, Mr. C.
You're welcome.
And of course, thank you to Afolabi Bikule.
It was great.